On today's episode of Project Pundits Unplugged, Braden accuses Jim of being an old man.
Jim, could you just, for me, could you say, like in just kind of your normal voice, could you say, I can't quite reach the bathroom, ma'am. Could you please help me out?
It's an industry thing where they should try.
I've got a goiter in my Schenectady.
Braden annoys NPCs.
Whether it's a peon or a goblin or, whatever they are. And when you click on them once they say yes, and you click on them again, yes, me lord, or whatever. But then you keep clicking on them, and their responses change. They get annoyed. So they'll be like, what is it? Stop it! Leave me alone!
See the world, they say.
See the world, they say. Go on a voyage, they say.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Project Pundits Unplugged pod. I'm done making excuses for myself and Braden for us not getting an episode out on a regular basis.
I've ditched like twice in a row for crying out loud. So that one.
Yeah, but it was me and pick your travel or dumb health issues or life in general. But we're still here, and obviously we have a lot to say, and that's never going to end. So timing wise, and one of the feedback I got from people is if we could reference when we recorded this, either in the notes, because people are trying to reconcile some comments about current events and things, and they're like, wait a minute, that happened 2 months ago. But
we're just slow in our pipeline.
So we're gonna talk about a couple of current events, some cool stuff, and then the topic of this podcast, which is
President Obama. Let's talk about.
That's
sorry.
right. That's right. Through what we talk about, that wouldn't sound that bad, but
I think we'd all love to have.
Right.
We'd love to have him back. Yeah, no doubt.
So this episode, the core topic is around the episode called Bottoms Up. It's just us being super creative with titling, but it's to talk about something that we run into often, running projects and working with clients and different things, which is this concept of looking at projects from two perspectives, and not only just projects, but different elements of projects and whatnot. But that's from both a top-down perspective and a bottoms-up perspective, meaning essentially looking at objectively at a problem for an organization, what they're trying to solve and what the solution should be. I don't want to say fully agnostic of the current state, because a lot of times you can't just, there's constraints around evaluating something from a...
But maybe from an ideal perspective, how you would solve it if you weren't constrained by resources, cost, time, any of those things. Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And then the bottoms up aspect of this, which is in many times comes up when you're dealing with like a process improvement or something where you're not implementing something that doesn't exist. Like if you're implementing something that doesn't exist, for the most part, you're stuck with top down anyways, because there is no bottoms up really to look at it. Although there's elements.
That's typically called greenfield. You'll hear
greenfield.
The term.
Yep.
Greenfield development, and usually what that means is that you're not having to rip something out or attach to something that's in a city, right? You've got a green field out there that you're able to just build on something brand new, clean, and usually they'll say greenfield because it implies it's clean and not messy and ugly and having to fit all your ugly, messy parts that are here today.
I think I will say that's. We've come to the conclusion on major transformational projects, on almost all of them, that is the ideal state. No one wants to ever do that. I think at one point we called one of the transformational efforts NewCo. Basically, like if you were to just state up NewCo and then move everything over to it versus
completely new set of core operation systems. Sure, what would it look like and how would they operate? And that would be a top-down example.
You'll find at least it's been my experience, when you deal with a lot of people, they're usually comfortable operating in one perspective or another, usually because their job is attached to one element or another. Executives tend to think top down, big picture strategy, And then people who are actually operating the business and doing things usually are biased by what they have to do to get their jobs done and what's going to make their lives the most easy.
And I'll say typically as a project manager, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care really at all. I just don't want people to get stuck in analysis and unable to get past the occasional friction that happens, and sometimes people get stuck when the top downs and the bottom ups can't see eye to eye of how a certain implementation or a system is going to work
exactly
out. I'm
right.
sure we'll cover that as we talk.
So we'll get into that. So that's the topic. If you want to skip to that, for the most part, I've been putting timelines and chapters so you can skip around the pieces in most of the podcast apps. If you enumerate the timeline, it'll auto-generate chapters, which is nice, where you can jump to different parts.
Your half-hour promotion for Hemorrhoid Cream, that's not... you don't want them to watch that whole thing?
No, they'll jump right to that. So, I don't evaluate the different brands. It's sad in my head. I just thought of 10 different ways I would evaluate Hemorrhoid Cream. And for whatever reason, what popped into my head, which is
consultants. Only consultants think this way.
The amount of microplastics in the Hemorrhoid Cream. But I'm like, why would microplastics matter other than the barrier to get into the bloodstream? I don't know.
How about the electric current? Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, go on. That was...
So,
okay.
So... Yeah, sorry. So, sure, only you and I are finding this funny, but...
Because we're 50 years old. Jim.
I'm not 50. Let's slow your roll. Way younger than 50.
I know.
You are 50.
Slow down. I know. You're just almost 50.
Nope. Not almost. Long way to go.
Yep.
Hundreds of days away.
Hundreds of days.
Tonight is the...
it's the debate?
It's the second first presidential debate.
It's a good way of putting it. I like the
1B. With
the first one, there was pretty much a winner and a loser because one exited the race.
Sort of, or was helped off the stairs of the, poor dude. And then, we've
talked about how I feel bad for that guy.
Absolutely, and so now we have Kamala Harris, and I don't want to get into too much of that. I think there's lots of arguments about whether that was right or not. Could you just replace a candidate when there was a whole primary process to where the delegates did end up voting and they voted for Kamala, but should have been a revote, whatever. Yes, ideally it should have, but and then there's this whole thing about fundraising, and I've heard different arguments on this, right? So if the Biden campaign raised let's just say it's $200 million, you can't just give that to another, but it was the Biden-Harris campaign. So theoretically, and I've heard different arguments on that.
That's got to probably get in a court somewhere, I'll bet.
Who knows? I don't know. Trump raises money, which is he spends for his legal defense. So I don't even know what's...
Jim, what are you looking forward to? What are you most looking forward to?
Nothing.
In the debate tonight? Nothing.
I can't... I have a weird thing, and I don't know if anybody else has this anxiety.
Are you going to watch the whole thing?
No, I'm not going to watch. I'm going to attempt to give it 30 seconds again. I probably won't be able to do it. It's less awkward.
How long did you last?
30
How
seconds.
long did you last time? 30 seconds.
Little less than 30 seconds. And then I watched some clips the next day.
I watched lots of clips because of the hubbub that came out of it. But who was speaking that? Because it's interesting. You're talking about you can't handle the awkwardness. Either one of them could have been speaking, and I don't know if I could have taken it more than 15 seconds.
I don't tend to watch certain movies or TV shows where, purposely scripted to create anxiety and awkwardness of I feel enough of that in my day-to-day life that I don't want to feel it.
The Office is a great example, and my kids can't handle that awkward. Same thing with Parks and Rec. They're built on that principle.
So from the debate now, Trump is just says untruths, just a straight lie. You're getting from him, and if I could be objective and it wasn't to leave my country, I would find him very entertaining because he's entertaining. The thing with Kamala, I guess I'll watch it, but like, I don't have anything to go off of. Like, she hasn't released any policies, very, very little. She's very thin on policies and positioning, and
deliberately so, right? I mean, the less that you're able to be nailed down to specifics, the better.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I'll watch that. I did watch, you know, when they had the Democratic convention, and really annoyed with people. I don't know if you saw the clip. Did you see the whole thing with his son in the? You had to have seen that. It made such big national news.
No, I haven't.
So we're gonna try to do live sharing and then embedding a reaction to some of this. So
should I prepare my reaction faces? Should I prepare?
No, I'll get you. So before saying how people generally reacted in two camps, I think I know what your reaction is going to be because you're a human. Record. Oops, that's not the record button.
There's a button that says record. Do you see the record button, Jim?
Nope. There we go. All right. So here you go. So we'll just start it over.
Play it for me.
Here we go.
Our daughter was born.
Wait, can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it.
We named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love
you. Okay. So that was his son standing up saying, you know, that's my dad.
Yeah.
And whatnot, and
his kids were emotional that,
and it wasn't. So by the way, it wasn't even that. It turns out, on top of that, which people lashed onto, which is annoying, right? Is his son has a developmental disability, right? There was nothing. So like I saw it, I'm like, that is great. Someone who loves their parents. Like, you don't get much of that these days. A reaction. It was bidirectional. Tears in his father's eye.
If I said something, I want to go on record. If I had said something like that to my kids, they would have been like this. You can record this, right? Well, it's being recorded. They'd be like this. Did you get that? Did everyone follow this?
Yep. So instead, you got a whole bunch of people trashed him and said, what is wrong with it? Like, who reacts to this like this? What a weird situation. And it was mostly on a conservative side, just trashing the kid and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, of all things to react to, that probably wasn't what you wanted to, like, there was a whole outlash.
I can't imagine conservatives are ever going to engender popularity by bashing on familial love, you know, in between children and their parents, given that it's something that they espouse. So.
And then I guess I'll show this one. Hang on. Can you see it?
Not yet.
You can't. Oh, I'm not.
You would have to share it first, Jim. So typically there's a button that you click that will
Richie,
say,
edit out all my incompetence, please. Thank you.
And then, no, we're leaving this in. This goes in. All of this goes in.
I'm very angry at her because of what she's done to the country. I'm very angry at her that she'd weaponized the justice system against me and other people. Very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence. And I think she'll be a terrible president. And I think it's very important that we win. And whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. It was just a soundbite. And she called J.D. and I weird. He's not weird. He was a great student at Yale. He went to Ohio State, graduated in 2 years, at the top of his class, and all of these different things. And we have this guy that's running a very failed state, who's had a terrible career. I mean, you have him saying they're weird. No, he's a weird guy. And she's weird in her policy. So I don't think so. I don't think people know who she is yet. When people, because really people didn't know. You can ask the man on the street.
All right, shut it down.
So what was weird about it, he got out. So what was happening is, right? And so his advisors are saying, like, just, it's the people you need to attract to your campaign. You already have the people on your side who are going to be on your side. That's not changing. So to attract the people in the middle, namely women, don't attack and just question like, this week she's black. I don't know. Last week, wasn't she Indian? What is she? That's happened. So what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So that was that.
What are we doing here, Jim?
I'm going to mention something that I think, let me just I'm going to throw kindling to both the extreme aspects of both parties. So there was, and you should look this up. Did you hear about, and I went down this rabbit hole, and it's not covered in the national media whatsoever.
Jim.
But
do it. What?
No, it's another political thing. Did you hear about what happened with purportedly happened with Tulsi Gabbard?
Okay.
So she was supposedly placed on a watch list, the timing of which was after she went on TV and criticized Kamala Harris policy and stuff. Whatever, that's conjecture but she was placed on a watch list, the equivalent of a terrorist watch list. So when she travels now, she has to go through special security screening. They have multiple people on the planes. They have canine units who track her. She can't supposedly go into a bathroom in the airport alone. She has to.
Wait, are we talking about the same? This is like a former congressperson, right?
The person who, got shot, right? And
yeah, what was she? A congressperson, a senator? I can't remember. She was a politician from Arizona.
And you dig into this, and I'll put the link in the show notes so people can go and look at it themselves, because it wasn't on any of the national news, but now there's congressional inquiries into this and everything else. And there's this program called the Quiet in the Skies program by the TSA. That is a pseudo program that it's meant to identify people who are potential threats.
High risks, sure.
But there's nothing around due process or anything with it. And so I'll put a link to the Quiet Skies program on TSA, and what are we doing? And a person who is decorated shot, what are we doing? And if to be completely fair, if in any way something like that is politically motivated, I don't give a crap who it is. We should root that out. I don't know if it is or it isn't.
It's hard for me to picture why. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, especially given kind of her background, what happened to her. It's like hounding apple pie and ice cream. It's scary to me that they would be doing anything in that direction.
So it's absurd. I'll put the links in and whatnot. I guess I'm going down my list of other kind of current event stuff because we're limited. Actually, we're down to only 15 minutes.
We only have 15 minutes. We got
there was another school shooting. We got the Israel Gaza stuff. We got interest rates will likely be materially cut, even though what bolstered that was the job numbers for the last year were reduced by, I think, 700,000 or 800,000. The growth, it was an adjustment for the prior year, whatever period. So that was more evidence. So they're going to cut interest rates, and they think they're going to be multiple cuts through the end of the year, a huge amount of cuts. That's what's being priced in. So I know that's
we should combine. Topic. I mean, if we really want to watch inflation take off, we should do that and pour just tons more government money into the economy. That'll really curb inflation.
Which gets to the other topic that we can't spend. By the way,
just so that folks understand, right? I just want to make sure folks understand the sides of the coin, right? Because as you look at us, Richie, cut side by side here. Thank you. Jim and I have very different sides of one of us owns real assets. One of us doesn't care at all about real assets. And it's just kind of lifestyle, right? It has nothing to do with overall approach. Just one is not necessarily interested in owning and managing and having real assets, and one of us is. As a result, one of us cares a whole heck of a lot about, let's say, the value of cash assets, and one of us doesn't care at all about the value of cash as we hold it.
It's not true. Just look at the price.
So true.
You are benefiting You are benefiting by the price of your real estate is through the roof.
I didn't even mention who has what. And I'm not talking just about real estate. I'm talking about there's real estate, and real estate assets tend to survive inflation much better. But I'm talking about more cash, right? So investments, stocks, whatever, those just get
purchasing
eroded.
Power of the dollar gets significantly eroded.
And Jim on more than one occasion has talked about inflating out of problems, which just, oh my goodness, just
so
shoot me.
I did want to have. There's this. I've watched. If you don't know who Ray Dalio is, he ran a very successful financial organization for years and whatnot. And he's written a couple of books. His book Principles, by the way, is excellent. I'm not even through it. It's a tome of like all his lessons learned, and they're very good at everything. So he did another series of the cyclical nature of civilizations. We'll get to that on the next one. Anyway, so presidential stuff going on, debates tonight. Unfortunately, there's another school shooting, which is awful.
Really, really interesting in this one that they charged the father for providing.
But he gifted an AR style. That's what they call an AR style weapon to his son. But yeah, and he knew there were challenges. So yeah, so I found that very interesting as well. Not that they did, but how quickly they charged him.
Right. It was almost simultaneously. Yeah.
But I do want to talk about some of what we referenced, the point of the episode being a project management focused podcast. So yeah, we got into some of the framing up of the top down versus bottom up. I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time early in my career in the requirements and testing and kind of the lower level elements of pulling together a solution and whatnot. And, I quickly learned, that folks are much more comfortable with what I would call a bottoms up perspective on work at that level, right? Because you're responsible at that point for essentially looking at all the requirements and making sure that whatever was created ticks all the boxes. My issue with it, and why I eventually thought the purpose of quality assurance and testing, does the thing meet the intent of what was originally meant to be built, so as the user are able to do what they need to do? So I've always had this mixed mindset. I'm much more comfortable myself looking at something objectively, because a lot of current state things I just don't like being biased by them and they're usually flawed in the first place. So
you can tell Jim tends to be a top-down thinker, although Jim's done so many bottoms-up effort, he doesn't trivialize it.
But I'm biased towards top-down for sure.
But it is true that one of the things that can, and I would say part of what happens often with bottoms-up thinker that I think Jim is implying, maybe not saying explicitly, is that bottoms-up thinking can hamstring solutions and broader thinking that you might say, well, I want to, your objective might be X, and you say, my current system can only do that if I do this, this, and this, and that's a bottoms-up approach, versus a top-down says, why are you constraining yourself with what this system can do? Let's think about what the ideal is, and then maybe we can fit it to the current system, maybe we can't, and we figure that out. But the bottoms-up can often, muddy the water, constrain you. Jim doesn't like being constrained, ever.
No, not at all. And if you're doing a brand new project from scratch, there's not a lot of bottoms up usually to tackle. For the most part, what a lot of us work on are projects or investments that organizations are making to improve something that exists today. It could be straight process improvement. It could be inevitably an upgrade to a system or whatnot, in which case it really behooves you as a project manager to try to keep an eye on both elements of that. And then also to recognize that is to always challenge your current state SMEs who are doing a job today, right? Because they're going to be the ones who are going to be your primary subject matter experts providing input. And you're going to want to ask them questions. And then I think, Braden, this is before we even started on this, but you were talking about how do you work with folks like that to get them out of that mindset. And I think it's important, I think you were saying, and you can build on it, just to talk about how that objective thinking could make their lives better, right? So, and they may not even be thinking from the right perspective, but you don't want to come down to the top down and just say, I don't care what you did before, this is what you're doing. There's ways of going about this without essentially doing that and then bringing them along for the ride.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, as you're sharing this, I was just, it struck me, Jim had kind of a moment like that just today. We were in a meeting and we were talking about a process that was operating the context of the project that we're working on. And, Jim was just asking, he says, okay, so there was a filter and edit that was potentially causing errors to this process that we're working on. And Jim's question was, why is this edit there? Does it really need to be there? Is it filling a purpose? Is it in the right place? I get it. It's there because they say it has to be there, but why? And so poking at that, the bottoms up folks say, well, that is there because it's there. It has to be there. You have to have these things there. And either they don't really remember, they don't know what the purpose is, or there might have been a purpose that this happens all the time in legacy systems where something's created for a valid purpose and that purpose goes away for any number of reasons, regulatory reasons or market-driven reasons, whatever it is. You might have a process that no longer has any purpose, but it once did, and no one thinks to challenge to say, can we get rid of this? What's this doing? And so it just sits there. And I've run into personally dozens of these where the process is there, it still runs, and yet it adds no value whatsoever. It just takes time and resources and energy to solve. So just a little example there. Of
and you're bringing forward, like with that type of an example, if you're going to bring that forward and let's just say there was something that said, well, this record needs XYZ data element. And in the future state, if your new source system, right, of that data doesn't have that data element and you don't challenge it, but that data element exists somewhere else, now all of a sudden you have to build multiple integrations with multiple systems to merge data just to support that element. And, again, if that transaction target system really shouldn't be checking for that thing, why are you doing it? So it behooves you to look at it from both perspectives. So this one will be a little unlike our other ones with endless my ramblings. This one will be tighter. So Braden, you want to wrap us up?
I do. Thank you for joining us. And I'm literally heading off to pick up a child at school right now. So thank goodness. Jim's like, I'm so past
buses
that.
In your wildfires. Like, what are we doing?
But join us again next time for more exciting adventures. We are actually going to continue our League of Lamentable
the League
Stakeholders.
of
We're going to get one of those episodes out here relatively soon as well, so look forward to it. Thanks, join, subscribe and like, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys. See ya.